Welcome everybody to episode 47 of the Career Breakthrough Series. I'm your host Paul Ames. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review my show to allow me to bring more incredible guests like Steph on the show. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking to Steph Sifandos. So Steph is a relational alchemist, a community builder and a change maker who facilitates transformational growth through neuroempowerment strategies, mindfulness, spiritual practice, and Western psychology to evolve and enhance the quality of our relationships. This episode is so powerful for anyone in business or looking to progress in their career because Steph and I had managed to talk about building and enhancing personal and professional relationships and how these are going to benefit you in your career. We also talk about how to tap into your conscious warrior to become the best version of yourself you can be. So without further ado, let's get started into this powerful episode and I'll let Steph head it away. So I'll see you on the inside. Guys, welcome to another episode of the Career Breakthrough Series. I'm your host, Paul Ames. And on the show today, I've got an incredible guest, someone who's really going to inspire you and help you forge more incredible relationships and help you enhance your current relationships. So my guest today, Steph Sifandos, is a relational alchemist who facilitates transformational growth through neuroempowerment processes, mindfulness, spiritual practice, and current Western psychology. Steph looks to improve, enhance, and evolve your current quality of your relationships. He's also an author and international speaker, and his work has led him to work with some incredible people throughout Australia and the world, working with Australia's top sporting teams, world champion athletes, and world champion fighters, as well as elite special forces soldiers. So Steph, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show, mate. It's an absolute pleasure being able to share your journey and experiences. If you just wanted to start by giving the audience a bit of a background into what some of your biggest influences on your career and your current path were growing up for you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for the kind introduction. I really appreciate being here, my friend. The impact or the influences or the inspiration that I've drawn from has been varied throughout my life from a very young age. My mother was quite a strong influence on me from a spiritual perspective or an esoteric perspective, looking beyond just the material world or the physical world and understanding our capacity as human beings beyond just the material.
Yeah.
Also, some great minds of the past. There's so many. Carl Sagan, Joseph Campbell, some of the great Western ancient philosophers, Eastern philosophers and mystics as well. And really diving into that, probably in my later teenage years, deeply inspired by our capacity or our human potential, our ability to do more than what we're doing, to be far more than what we're being as a collective and as individuals. And that really prompted me to investigate and understand the mind and explore the mind and explore the role the mind plays in the mind-heart-body integration in terms of peak human performance and reaching flow states and reaching or embodying states of being that are really highly connected, not only within the organism, within the self, but also interconnectedness with other people and our environment as well. And look, to be honest, Paul, that journey is continuous. Like, I don't think it stops. It doesn't just cut out. It's something that I continue to explore and almost or sit with and be with almost every moment of every day. Consciously, and that's a gift. I see that as a gift. I observe that as a gift. I feel that as a gift. It's a gift I give myself, and in turn, I hope that that inspires others, or at least. Look, at the end of it, Paul, it's all about how we hold ourselves. So, when we're in ignorance, we don't hold ourselves accountable to our potential. When we have clarity, we hold ourselves accountable to greater potential. In my life, I've been deeply ignorant. I've learned. You ask about what inspires. My own ignorance has inspired me. My own lack of awareness, my lack of connection, my lack of being in integrity and alignment in self, that has inspired me. After some time, unfortunately, immersion into that negative space has inspired me to be a different person, to explore what other avenues there are for expression that is more connected and in integrity and authentic and congruent to my highest values, but also what I perceive to be human collective values as well, and that can help us grow as a society.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Thanks so much for that answer, Steph. That's incredible. And I think, a lot of us are guilty of that as well, where we've, focused on such negativity and been quite ignorant with what we've been focusing on. So, yeah, I think I myself have gone through some pretty incredible changes where I've had to look deep within and, change the person that I want to be or, reach the potential that I want to be. So, yeah, guys, go back and have a listen to what Steph shared. That was incredible there. So, Steph, I'd love to touch on, I know you've got an incredible program called the Conscious Warrior. I'd love you to touch on, what that means to you and, what it actually means to be a conscious warrior.
Yeah, sure. So the Conscious Warrior is essentially a program assisting men, teaching men. It's for men, but it is also for women as well. It's for any gender type, to be honest with you, but specifically for masculine expression. And this is probably a conversation that's, to delve into that is very deep and very lengthy, so it's not the conversation now, but essentially it's teaching men how to be healthy men. And that was born out of really deep introspection on self, on my own self-observations, and asking myself, am I really being the man I want to be in the world? And the answer was no. Like, this was a few years ago. The answer was a resounding no. I was not being that man. I was not embodying the principles of masculinity or manliness, or how I was showing up in relationship, in intimate relationship, but also in my relationships in general, just my platonic relationships, my relationship to the world, to my own self, to my ideas, to my purpose. So really, the Conscious Warrior is a framework, a 12-principle framework that assists us to model, that assists us in, when we practice and embody these principles and we're consistent with this practice, it assists us in embodying a fuller man, a whole masculine figure that is balanced, and it also has access to the contrast, which is the feminine within. So the be, do energies, go, flow energies that we have as human beings, that we essentially all have and we require in order to function in this world. And there's different ways of looking at the world, different perspectives of moving through the world. So the Conscious Warrior is really about creating wholeness and emergence in self, teaching men how to move away from archaic, detrimental, disjointed, disconnected principles of what it means to be a man, because they don't really have a place in modernity. Yet we still apply them, and it's causing great disconnect. It's disconnecting us from ourselves, from Earth, from our partners, from the women in our lives, from our children. So it's really, it was born because I was looking at myself and thinking, no, this is not who I want to be. And I really delved into that and explored that deeply. And so the Conscious Warrior program sets the foundation for the Reclaim Your Kingdom program, which is a warrior's code, which is essentially the offline or the in-person contact where there's an immersion experience that comes with that. There's also, multiple multi-day workshops as well, where we deep dive into what it means to be a man and how to be a man in this world without compromising our values and who we are. In fact, gaining clarity, acuity, and purpose on who we are, or purposes, and then moving through the world in conjunction with that value alignment, so that we are authentic and in integrity. And that changes the game, man. That changes how we move through the world, how we relate to ourselves and to each other, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And guys, I highly recommend getting on board with Steph's course there. I mean, I can only relate from my own experiences of going through counseling and learning my own counseling practice. And it's amazing the stuff that you can uncover and how you can evolve as a person and really get through. For me, it was a lot of deep-seated stuff that had affected me during my childhood and, my upbringing. And it's amazing the stuff, once you get that out and you get clarity, like Steph said, it just opens up a different version of yourself, and, you function a lot smoother and freer in the world. So yeah, that's amazing, Steph. Thanks for clarifying that. That's incredible. So Steph, I'd also love to touch on, I know we've all got an incredible positive trait or positive habit that really helps us achieve the success that we have in our life. We've also got a hindering habit, a hindering trait. What would be your most positive habit that's helped you achieve success? And on the flip side, what would be your most hindering?
Oh, that's a good question, man. It's a really, really powerful question. I'm one of those people, Paul, that when you say, give me the top 3, I need to give you top 5. You say, give me 2 or 3. Say, give me 10, I've got to give you 20. I'm just one of those people.
Awesome. Flow with it.
Probably one of the hindrances. One of the biggest, I'm tenacious, man. I'm really persistent. When I get an idea in my head and there's alignment with that idea and I really believe in it, like I fucking do anything to get, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
No, of course, mate. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, everything's like.
I go for it like a bull at a gate.
Yep.
And that can also be, on the flip side, my biggest hindrance. And it's just something I'm learning now, is to learn, not now, but in the last few years, is to learn when to go and to learn when to flow. And that's that contrast that I'm talking about. That's that expressive energy that sometimes it doesn't serve us to go. Sometimes it serves us to just flow, be, observe, pull back a little bit. So whilst it's one of my greatest gifts and it ensures success, and I do that on purpose when I say that, when I was reading in inverted commas, it can also be a hindrance if I get lost in that tenaciousness or that persistence. But of late, I'm really learning to move with that. And the gifts that come from that are phenomenal. But sometimes, we're imperfect, perfect beings, and we're perfectly imperfect. So we don't always get it right, and or we don't always get it in alignment with our perception of how we would like things to be. So that's a sort of double-edged sword as an example I could give. I could give you plenty more, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. And it's actually amazing from all the people I've interviewed. Like a lot of people tend to have their same positive trait as also their flip side hindrance. So it's amazing just finding, like you said, knowing that balance, know when to pull back on the reins and when to push forward. So I think I'm also guilty of the similar sort of trait. Mine would be, pushing like that, going at things full on, but then also not having the patience to expect to see things through. Like I've learned to become a more patient person. That's been my biggest one, where I'm like, why isn't this happening? What's going on? I put the work in. Why isn't it going on? So
well, that's really interesting, Paul. And I'll share something else with you as well for the viewers. This may be of value, just intuitively, instinctively. I feel it may really work. Is the feeling body? So I'm a very deep empath.
Yep.
And in that it's beautiful because we are able to feel so much. We gain deeper insight and layers into any circumstance and situation and relational dynamic. And the double-edged sword with that again is that it can spiral me into a melancholic state. And then that feeds in. That can also feed into a very deep inspiration where I produce, I create, I allow myself to receive. And when I say receive, like there's a kindness and compassion that takes place with self that allows me to open up my creative outlet or my co-creative outlet, and something works through me, and I'm able to create my programs, words, writings, musings, whatever it may be, models, connected dots that I make. And so there's another double-edged sword as well. So because I know there's a rise in empaths in the world, and some people are really scared of it, and they don't know how to hold that within themselves. And I've been there, and it's challenging. But if you can hold it within yourself, and you know that there's deep value in this, and allow the melancholy or the sadness to move through you and feel it, if you can hold it, it can reap tremendous benefits on who you become and who you are and how you ground yourself as a human being, and surround yourself in that time with things and environment, people that inspire you, that you trust, that you respect, that you revere, in order to facilitate your growth through that difficulty and through that process. And that's been a tremendous learning for me as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'd definitely go back and have a listen to that, everyone listening. That's really, really knowledgeable and a great insight there. So, Steph, I'd love to find out, obviously happiness is the biggest thing that, makes us all thrive, and one of the most important things in the world. So what to you would be the key to a happy and fulfilled life, just for you personally?
Awesome, man. I'll do something for you and for the wonderful viewers out there. I'll provide a framework for what happiness is to me, and then I'll personally tell you what I do to make me happy as well.
Yeah, sure.
For me, happiness is actually quite simple. When we gain clarity on our purpose or purposes, when we gain clarity on who we are as a person, and that's an ever-evolving process, right? But there's like a baseline of clarity that we have for ourselves. And when we reach that, and we really embody, embrace, and understand that, we can connect to it deeply. And then we align our everyday actions with that clarity. That becomes meaningful. It becomes fulfilling. And meaning and fulfillment literally lay the foundations for happiness. It's as simple as that. That's it.
Wow.
That's my formula. That's for me, that's happiness. And what I do every day is I fill my days with things, experiences that are meaningful to me, i.e. this right here. I'm connecting with another beautiful human being. I know part of your story. I know where you've come from. I see you today. It's fucking inspiring. I'm inspired now. Now I'm inspired. I get goosebumps. Now I want to go create. I want to go give. I want to allow myself to receive. Yep. I fill my day up with movement, because movement's very important to me, especially for every human being, but for men in particular for various reasons. And that's part of my Conscious Warrior program.
Definitely.
So movement, fitness, exercise, training. I have my own spiritual practice. I immerse myself in silence and stillness, and that varies sometimes. I surround myself with beautiful people. I do or I engage in what inspires me. So in other words, my service to humanity. And I'm happy. That doesn't mean I don't feel sadness, I don't get angry, I don't get frustrated, I don't ask deep questions of the universe, of God, of me, of my environment, of earth, of whatever's happening. But I'm happy because I'm fulfilling experience. I'm having experiences, fulfilled experiences that mean something to me. Yeah. And there's some of the practices that I have. I tell people that I care for them, that I love them, that they mean something to me and why. And I do that as regularly as I can. There's some of the experiences that I have that really fulfill me.
Wow, what a great response, and I love the simplified version of it. And thanks for sharing some of the important things and giving us a bit of a snapshot into your daily practices and what really helps you. So that's really great, Steph. Thank you for that. So I know we touched about it off camera, but I got a question I always throw at all of my guests. Now, I've actually used this from solution-focused therapy, a style of counselling I've learned, and it's called the miracle question. So imagine if you went to sleep tonight and overnight a miracle had occurred. And when you woke up the next morning, everything you ever wanted to impact in the world or anyone you wanted to impact in the world had come true. There were no financial roadblocks or no mental roadblocks holding you back. What would be that biggest impact you'd want to make on the world, and why would it be so important to you, Steph?
I love these questions, man. I'm going to be cheeky and I'm going to answer that and respond to that in two ways. First, I'm going to give you the almost what I would see as the foundation for mass evolution or transformation or transmutation or awareness or reconnection to self, right? And that is that every human being, every sentient being realizes their potential, their true worth. And in doing so, the cascade effect of that will be that how our socioeconomic, sociocultural, geopolitical, global multinational systems work now would become obsolete. That mentality of scarcity, that collective movement of coming from fear would just drop and cease. And the second part to that, to be really specific, is that we as a humanity really begin to conserve every artifice of land, of forest, of rainforest, of mountainous area, of fresh water systems, our ecology, that we connect so deeply, because again, we go back to that first part, we connect so deeply to ourselves and we realize who we truly are. We would begin to look at, we would extend that, we would realize our interconnectedness. I mean, truly realize, not intellectually realize, not say, yes, we are all one, we're connected, but grasp it at a visceral level and at a spiritual level, per se, for lack of a better term. We would treat everything as we would treat ourselves. But again, in order to treat ourselves with reverence and respect and love and care and adoration and connection, we have to understand our self-worth as well. So that's how I would want to see the world. It's happening as well. It's happening.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. It's definitely seen a bit of a shift in the world, and like you said, more people becoming realizing about empaths and getting a bit worried about it. But there's things to embrace, and these feelings are natural. And I think the biggest thing is like what you said. I love that response where you said, we to think outside of ourselves and treat everything else like we would treat ourselves. Like, I think that's amazing, especially watching some of the stuff that's going on with the oceans and how we're killing everything and just the damage we're doing to the planet in general. I don't think people, they get so fixated in their little bubble that they just don't think outside, don't expand their mind. So yeah, what an amazing response, Steph.
We're going to pop the bubble, bro. We're going to pop the bubble so there's no, remove the box. Not think outside the box. There is no box. Remove the box. Because if we think outside the box, we're still placing parameters on ourselves and edges, and we've got to cut that as a humanity. We're so entrenched in our ways as a collective, which influences and impacts and feeds into our individual behaviors and habits, that we limit ourselves. We don't perceive ourselves as limitless. I'm not talking about defying gravity, or although there's multiple stories that great sages, gurus, and swamis are able to do that. Great minds are able to do that, but not going so much there. But knowing that we can break old systems that are hundreds or thousands of years old, such as patriarchy, such as our current socioeconomic doctrine and paradigm. There's just so much we can do differently that would really feed into allowing us to thrive instead of just survive. Like when 2.5 billion people are in poverty, that's not healthy. There's an imbalance there, you know.
Definitely.
It's just not. That's something not right.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you said about that too. Like something I was watching yesterday about these monks. I think it was Tibetan monks that were able to how they've come up with a new theory how a lot of these structures were built back in the day and how they were able to move all these giant boulders and things like that. And one of them was through sound therapy or some sort of sound pitch where they set up all of these different musical instruments into this big speaker kind of trumpet thing, and were able to move giant boulders and shift them huge distances by the creation of sound and noise. So, yeah, it was just incredible to see, you know, what that, and it's actually been tested and, proven to an extent. I think a lot of people are skeptical of it, but yeah, it's amazing the power of what is not known. The things that we don't know, we've only tapped into a small portion of what our brains can capable of. So, yeah, it was.
I mean, just because I agree, man. Just because we don't know or because we're not aware of something, it does not mean it does not exist. It just means it requires further exploration for us to solidify that into our consciousness or our sphere of reality, for us to understand that at greater depth. So then, therefore, we can do more with it, or we can access it at greater reference points, and it can be of more value to us. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But that's why, you know, science exists. Science exists to explore, to determine, to unravel. The scientific method is a beautiful method for exploration, and there are also other beautiful methods of exploration as well, and that's one of them. And eventually, you know, if someone really wants to prove something, or a governing body wants to prove something, it will happen in its own time.
Yeah, definitely. So true. So Steph, because of podcasts tailored to a lot of people in their career who are looking to, you know, expand themselves or, you know, move up in their career, I know a lot of people really struggle with maintaining that balance of working so much and maintaining their relationships in their career, whether that be at work or at home. So what would be some tips and advice that you could share to really help people, you know, be more present and engage in their relationships and to improve and enhance their relationships as well?
Yeah, it was a very loaded, powerful question, Paul. It's awesome, brother. Are you almost speaking to a work-life balance at some point?
In a way, just obviously because people are focusing so much on one element, they're neglecting or trying to keep their fine balance. Yeah.
So there's a number of different approaches we can take. The first thing I say is that work-life balance doesn't truly exist. If you need a work-life balance, it means that you're not content, or you're not really aligned in your career or your vocation, number one. Because if you're aligned in your vocation or your career, yes, you can be out of balance because you can sometimes I spend hours upon hours every day immersing myself in my service or business, and it's at the detriment of other areas of my life. So I need to say, well, hold on, I need to pull back a bit, because in that micro element of balance, I don't have that. Overall, I have work-life balance because I love what I do and I don't see it as work per se.
Definitely.
And I do what I love. I love what I do. I do what I love. But in order for some real tangible guidance there, especially with relationships, so in context to following your career and your passions and your vocation and what inspires you, and then balancing that with your intimate relationships, there's a number of different avenues that we can take. Now, the first is there needs to be a willingness. You have to identify that, do I want to be in an intimate relationship? And you have to gain clarity on that. That's really important. Now, most of us, we seek and we thrive on connection. Now, connection is a basic human need. It presents itself in many ways. It's not necessarily only through intimate romantic relationship or relating. But you have to get clear. Do you want a relationship? Have you got time and space? And can you put the attention into that right now? Because some of us, and I've been here, where I've wanted a relationship, but I haven't wanted a relationship. And for various reasons. And there's been conflict there. And when it's in a conflict, there's going to be, when it expresses itself in disconnection and disharmony, and it expresses itself on a spectrum of aggression. Yep. Yeah. So there's tension and aggression. So you have to get clear, do I want to be in a relationship? And if that's something that you deeply yearn for and that you're aligned with, then you have to get to know yourself. Self-gnosis or self-praxis, self-awareness, deep self-introspection is always essential. So knowing what you need so that you can then consciously communicate that to your partner.
That's powerful.
And telling them, these are my needs, these are my wants. But the flip side to that, and what I call selfish selflessness, and this is part of it, this is one of the principles in the conscious warrior model and the sovereign leadership model that I've developed as well, is that you have to also be open to asking, what do you need from me? What can I give you to allow this relationship to flourish? And also gain clarity on What are your common interests and your common goals? This is very simple advice. And we call these unconscious, some of this is unconscious contracts. Like, for example, what happens is over time, when we are in a relationship, especially if we're intimate and we live together, we will have habits that we've brought into that relationship from our other relationships, from other areas of our adulthood, from our childhood as well. So, for example, like a really simple example that we don't often see, okay, we don't often think of. Let's say you're making dinner together, okay? And, you know, you've had a very hard day at work or your career, and you're coming back and you're home and you're making dinner together. And you have a preference that you like to just make dinner, eat, and then take care of cleaning up after. But your partner, they like to have everything clean first before they sit down to eat. Now, over time, no one says anything and it just builds up. There's tension there around that. But sometimes our habits are intrinsic. They're either just very vague, basic habits that just come from habit and there's nothing really to them. But sometimes our habits go a lot deeper than that. Perhaps as a child, you've been traumatized as a child, and you would then live with maybe an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother or a grandfather or both. And your grandmother and grandfather, you were very close to them because you had reprieve from your primary caregivers who were very aberrant or violent where you experienced trauma, which many children do. The statistics are ridiculous, how many children experience physical, emotional, and sexual trauma and abuse.
Yeah.
And in that, with living with your grandparents always cleaned up after. And you made an association somewhere in your unconscious mind and somewhere in your being, and then through implicit memory it comes back into your adulthood. You now are very comfortable and you feel safe. You can't explain it, but you feel safe when you engage in that habit.
Yeah.
But then your partner always then begins to get very upset and angry with you. Now, because you haven't explored this habit or this belief system or this way of being and expression, you don't understand it either. So you just become defensive. So, well, that's the way I do things, and why can't I do it this way? And then we argue, and then arguments compound, and then we begin to break down trust, and trust breaks down. And when trust breaks down, it's very difficult to rebuild trust. It's possible, but it just takes more time.
Yeah.
So when we come back to, the reason I told you that story was I come back to, you asked me what the piece of advice is know self.
Yep.
Know every facet, every layer, every aspect of yourself as much as you can to then be able to express and communicate that and have that open communication with your intimate partner and allow them to do the same, give them the opportunity to do the same. And together that you become a cohesive unit and you identify, is there value here? Is there a values alignment? Because if there's not, we can gracefully depart, or we can work on it. We can make the choices that we want to. Yeah, that's the power of self-gnosis, of knowing self-awareness, which is again an intricate principle of the Conscious Warrior program.
Wow, that's amazing advice. I love that example too. Like, I can relate from, my wife's family, like, even some of the ways that her family does things and, how she does things and how I do things. And it's, like you said, I've found that that's the biggest thing that's helped is like, obviously we've all got our own way that's instilled in us, but, talking it out, adapting to it or trying to, work with each other and have common goals. I think that's incredible advice.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, the power there is that we become, the cascade effect, domino effect of that, we become more compassionate, more empathetic, more understanding. We're able to view life from different perspectives. What also happens is when we express, when we verbalize, and neuroscience demonstrates when we verbalize our feelings, that inner emotion, we begin to deactivate and diffuse and soften the amygdala and the brainstem, which are in part responsible for fear activation and the release of stress hormones in the physiology. We quieten that. We come more from the prefrontal cortex to the prefrontal lobe, and we begin to become more creative and calmer in our presence so we can see more because we're not under threat. So therefore, the way we relate and communicate is not under tension and aberrance and violence and aggression. It's more calm, compassionate, empathetic, understanding, willing. That's the power, yeah? Wow,
that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's really amazing to know that. And everyone go back and have a listen. It's good to understand how it all works, where everything comes from, and where our feelings and emotions stem from. So that's great. So Steph, we're just getting ready to wrap up soon, but I'd love for you to share. Where's the best place to get in contact with you? I mean, you've shared some incredible knowledge and incredible insights in today's episode. So where would be the best place, say, if somebody's struggling with some issues in their life and they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. There's various avenues. You can connect with me on social media, and that's just Sifandos. Sifandos Relational Alchemist is my Facebook page. My website, stefsifandos.com, STEFSIFANDOS.com, and all contact information's there. And I place a lot of content on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, articles on my website with blogs, on Facebook in particular as well. So there's a great deal of free content and collateral that you can read if that interests you. I have many different programs that I offer as well, and they're all available through my website, and you can access them there and all that information there. It's really quite easy. It's not difficult. Yeah, stefsifandos.com.
Awesome.
Central access point. Yeah.
And guys, yeah, definitely jump on board Facebook or social. Steph's got some incredible content up there. His videos and articles are awesome. I read them every day. So, yeah, you guys are going to learn a lot from that. So, Steph, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, being able to share your journey and experiences and get a deeper insight into, some of the issues that affect us and how we can remedy them or how we can work on them to enhance our lives. So thank you so much, man. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you asking me to come on board your fabulous podcast and your show. Thank you so much, Paul.
And guys, stay tuned next week where we've got another incredible guest who's going to really help you break through that glass ceiling in your career. So stay tuned then.